Welcome or welcome back to my channel for another episode of What's New with Human Design, my weekly Human Design Transit Report. Right now, the Sun is in the gate 5 and the Earth is in the gate 35. Now, in last week's episode, I talked about these two gates extensively, and you can go and watch that video here if you want to find out more about it. For today's video, I want to focus more on the next transit that's coming, that starts on Thursday, December 9th, and will go through Monday the 13th. So on Thursday the 9th, the Sun will move into the gate 26 and the Earth will move into the gate 45. I have a lot to say about these gates, so that's why I wanted to focus on it. Both of these gates are in the commerce or the ego circuit, sub-circuit of the tribal circuit. So they're both tribal energy. And this is again a change in the circuitry energy from last week, which was more about more collective circuitry. And then before that, we've been doing a lot of individual circuitry. So we're moving through some different qualities of overall energy. Now, the commerce circuit and the tribal circuit is what it sounds like. I mean, it's been renamed the commerce circuit or the community circuit in quantum human design. All tribal energy is about our relationships. It's about our family, the people who are relatively close in our communities. Remember that as humanity, we have lived in groups of 50 to 150 people for the vast majority of our time. This society that we live in now, where we have billions and billions of people on the planet, and we live with millions of people in some cities, and tens of thousands in many others, is new. Okay, this is 100 years old or less on our planet. So let's just remember that. So we have deep stored inside of our DNA and of our epigenetics and of our ancestral memory what it was like to live in much smaller groups of 50 to 100 people. So that's what tribal energy is about. And it has to do, in this case, with what our relationships are around commerce, around resources, providing for children and for our elders and for the whole community. Let's remember that in tribal communities, commerce was done more through bartering and trade, not through coins or certainly not through paper money. And so what's happening in this circuit has much more to do with how we are engaging in commerce with one another, more in the sense of what is the energy exchange that is appropriate for what we're engaging in. Gate 26 in traditional human design is known as the Trickster, and in quantum human design, it's known as integrity. Let's unpack this a little bit. This is a highly influential energy. It includes the ability to enroll people, and that it's known as part of the channel of sales in traditional human design. And sometimes it's known as the gate of sales. It's persuasive, it's enrolling, it has the ability to promote to people and to bring them into whatever it is that you're promoting, right? Or that you're enrolling people into. So this is an energy definitely that can be used in the sales process, in the bartering and trade process. It can also be used in negotiations. So it may not be about money so much, but negotiating bargains. It's not in the channel of the bargain, but it is a kind of energy where negotiations take place. The reason it's called the Trickster in traditional human design is that the low expression, what I would call the shadow aspect of it. So the shadow aspect in my terminology is when you are identifying with power over energy. Okay, you're trying to get power over other people through manipulation and through control, whether that's more overt or whether that's more covert. And so the Trickster is about trying to enroll people in a way that is manipulative. Okay, the quintessential used car salesman. I always feel bad for people who actually sell used cars when I say that, but it's kind of this archetype, this modern archetype that we have, right? where somebody's trying to manipulate you into a sale for personal gain, and they don't really care whether or not what you get is actually something of value. Okay, so that is like the shadow aspect of the 26. The disempowered aspect of the 26 is being afraid of enrolling people or promoting things, thinking sales is really icky and that it's always manipulative. So it's kind of a reaction to that manipulative side, right? But the really awakened part of the 26, it has to do with that ability to enroll people into things of high value that are beneficial to them. And it's not at all a power over strategy. So it's not trying to make people do anything. It's not trying to talk people into anything. It's much more based in inspiration and then opening up possibilities, because a lot of us are kind of closed down around what we've seen to be negative sales. And let's face it, there is a lot of negative manipulation going on in sales, in marketing. I actually absolutely acknowledge that. Even as a marketing person and somebody who's taught sales, I absolutely recognize that. And you don't have to do sales that way, and you don't have to enroll people that way or promote things that way. You can totally do it in integrity. And this, I think, is why Karen Curry Parker, who created Quantum Human Design, has renamed it integrity. When we are operating in integrity with this power of enrolling and promoting, then we're always doing this so that it is a benefit as much or more of a benefit to the other person as it is to us. This also relates to pillar number 7 of feminine sovereignty, which is mutually beneficial collaborations. Because the highest expression really of sales or of promotion or of enrolling is a collaboration. It's seeking out the place where this is going to be mutually beneficial for everyone involved. So as the sun is lighting up this gate of integrity, this gate of enrollment or this gate of sales, it's a great time for you to be looking at what is your relationship to the enrolling process. Now, one thing I'll just say is if you're not sure about this outside of kind of the sales context, just think about small children. Small children are experts at enrolling their parents into things, right? Particularly, I think, in the more open parenting styles where children are allowed to actually speak up about what they want and to say that, I really want this, or I really want to go there, or I really want to spend this time with this friend, or I really want to do this sleepover. And they are really experts at enrolling their parents and allowing them to do what they want to do. So if you have kids like that, or your kids are like that, that might speak to you. Now, if your kids or the kids guilt trip you, okay, that's not an integrity. Or if they try to make you bad and wrong, or they try to manipulate you in some way, that's the lower energy of it, okay, that shadow energy of it. But if they're really genuinely just speaking from their heart, and they're just saying, I really long for this, I want this, can I do this? Please let me do this, right? They are enrolling. So if you have your own business, I would invite you to lean into your energy around sales during this time, whether it is defined in your chart or not. I have it, my unconscious Mercury is in the gate 26, so I know it really well. And I have danced with it, over the time that I've had my own business. And so it's a great time to be reviewing this if it's open or if it's defined in your chart, either way, because you have an extra opportunity to work with this energy and elevate it into its highest expression during this time. And if you have some of that, sales is icky, I don't want to do it, I don't like promoting myself, whatever the subtext of that is, right? If you're not in a place of feeling like you deserve it, or there's some worthiness issues, things like that, because the 26 is on the will center. And the will center does have to do with value and self-value and worthiness and deservedness. So if you do have some questions, and this can be very subconscious, right, or under the radar, that you might not really feel that you deserve or that you're worthy to be able to receive the amount of income that you actually really do deserve and you really should get for what you're doing in your business, I want to suggest that if you do have negative ideas about sales, particularly in relation to your own business and you promoting yourself, that there may be some self-worth issues that are going on in there, some deservedness issues, okay? And you can heal those. You can totally change those by acknowledging yourself and acknowledging the value of what it is that you are providing, whether that's a product or a service in the business that you're doing. Now, I know that I attract and work with a lot of people who are in the healing arts, they're in the personal development world, they are teachers, they are thought leaders, they are people who are promoting their ideas and also their services. And you really need to have a strong sense of your own deservedness when you're doing that and of your self-worth. And the truth is that you really do deserve that. One suggestion that I often give to clients that you can do for yourself is to write down all of your formal education, okay, all of the years of formal education that you've had. If you paid for that, all that you paid for that, to think about all the hours and all of energy and attention that you put into that formal schooling. Then any other trainings that you've had, any other certifications that you've done, things that are outside of a formal education environment, but nonetheless are definitely educational. Then what about your life experience? Maybe trips that you've been on or different types of volunteer activities that you've done, ways that you've worked in different organizations and contributed to communities. Write all that stuff down and really take a look at that and realize how much you have experienced in your life already and how much you have provided. Take in the value of the way that you have built yourself into the person that you are right now, because all of that informs whatever it is that you're turning around and providing to others with your products or your services. Okay, that is something that can really give you a reality check when you start going into this scarcity idea. And especially if you're a first line profile, so you keep thinking that you have to know more and more and more and more and more and more and more about something before you can offer it, or you have the gate 48, which is the gate of wisdom, but the shadow side of that, or the fear of that, is the fear of never knowing enough. Those two places can really feed into this kind of negative sense of worthiness. So my suggestion is that you just spend a little bit of time on this over the weekend and leaning into it and giving yourself a reality check, giving yourself a pat on the back for all that you have already created in your life, how you have grown and developed and evolved over the time that you've been here. No matter how old you are, you will have things that you can acknowledge yourself for. You also want to consider if you have had any habits of manipulating or trying to control overtly or covertly in order to enroll people into something that you want them to do. This is something that unfortunately women are really acculturated into. It has a lot to do with the sense of being disempowered. And so being disempowered, then we have to manipulate in order to get what we want. This is just a legacy from, centuries, millennia of patriarchy, when women really, they couldn't own property, they couldn't have their own money, they didn't have control over their own bodies, and so on. And unfortunately, this is still the case in some parts of the world. So I do want to acknowledge that. And for many of us, especially those of us in the West, and especially for those of us who have white skin color, we have more control over all of that now. And yet the legacy has still been with us. This belief that's deeply embedded in the cells of the body that often tell us that we have to manipulate covertly, right, in order to get what we want. So you want to be able to clean that up too, because that's going to get in the way of your integrity and your ability to engage in the sales process and the negotiations, and then to be able to enroll and to promote people into things that you care about, including your own business. But this also is true for, let's say, you're really concerned about the wolves that are being slaughtered in Idaho right now, right? This is something that you are really concerned about. It's something that really concerns me. Like, in order to be able to enroll people to help to speak out about that and trying to stop that from happening, you really want to be in integrity about that, because otherwise, if you're coming from a manipulative place, people aren't going to like it, right? And even if they agree and do the thing that you want them to do, it's going to be unclean. It's going to be kind of icky and sticky. And you don't want that. You want to be coming from a very high vibrational place when you are inviting people to participate in something that you care about and that you think is beneficial either, to them or to the greater good. So that's the gate 26. The gate 26 is resting on the gate 45, which is where the earth is during this transit. And the gate 45 in traditional human design is known as the king or queen gate, or the sovereign, and the kind of royalty version of sovereign. Or in quantum human design, it's known as natural leadership. I consider it tribal leadership. You could call it natural leadership, but I think of it as tribal leadership. So what does that mean? Tribal leadership, if we go back to what I said at the beginning, has to do with our relationships and our families, our communities, the people who are close in. It could be as big as the town or the city that we live in, right? But it's not the big, like the United States, which is definitely collective energy, right? It's got 50 states. So it's collective energy. And so there's a gradation, right, between the city and the nation. And so the city or your own community, however you define your community, that's more of the tribal energy. Let's unpack this idea about power for a minute, because if you've been following me at all, you know I've been talking about leadership a lot. And I recently did the Activate Your Lightworker Leadership Codes mini course, which you can still register for and get the recordings for all of that. I will also put the link where you can register for that. It's totally free and it'll be available for you, because I do a lot of unpacking about leadership inside of that mini course. One of the things I found is that as I've talked to people about leadership, is there's a lot of discomfort actually about the notion of leadership, certainly among the people that I attract and that I am related to. And I think that this comes from the idea that leadership always goes with this power over kind of energy. This makes sense because through the centuries and through the millennia, it's certainly in this what we would call the era of the last 5,000 years, okay, the Judeo-Christian era, that it has been power over, based in domination and shored up by violence and brutality. And it was smaller in times past. I mean, the Roman Empire was really kind of the first big empire that expanded and brutalized tribal people all over Europe through their imperialistic expansion. And that was where we really got intense power over. And they were doing this over tribal peoples. Certainly some of these tribal people had skirmishes with each other over territory and so on, but they were not imperialistic the way that the Roman Empire became. And we have inherited the legacy of the Roman Empire over these last few thousand years, and we've seen it, in larger or smaller ways. And this has really influenced our idea of what leadership is. And the old version of the 45, right, which is the king and the queen, royalty, absolutely fits into that category, right, of the power over. Although benevolent royalty could have the well-being of their people as their highest priority. I'm not saying that there was never a king or queen that had that. But generally speaking, in what we think of as royalty, that wasn't really the way that it was. It was very hierarchical. It was very much about bringing resources up to the royals. It was not about making sure that everybody had what they needed, not at all. So in our time now, as we are leaning into leadership, and we know that we need new forms of leadership as we are creating this new world that we so want to live in, that is going to be more equitable, more sustainable, that unravels the systemic sexism and misogyny and racism and xenophobia that is embedded into our, imperialistic cultures. There's still, this is deeply embedded in our psyches and in our institutions. And as we're unraveling that, we need new forms of leadership to come forth. So in the Lightworker Leadership Activation Code, So in the Activate Your Lightworker Leadership Codes mini course that I did, I talked about their leadership includes not just power over. That's one that we're very aware of. And I agree, I'm not attracted to that either. But there's also power within. And the first 4 pillars of feminine sovereignty are all about power within. Because we need to develop our own internal integrity, our own clarity of purpose, our own freedom from the conditioning that would lead us into being manipulative or disempowering ourselves or trying to control other people, right? Which is how a lot of us have been conditioned. And it's about trying to fit in so that we can have the success and the money that we want and the prestige and all of that, right? We're unraveling all of that. And we're building a new sense of power on the inside. So power within is part of New World leadership. Then when we spiral out, which is what we do in the 5th power, then when we spiral out, which is what we do in the 5th pillar of feminine sovereignty, which is all about life purpose and our contribution to the greater whole, then we're starting to look at how are we relating to other people and what is it that we are uniquely designed to do to bring forth out into the world. What is our contribution? It's not the same as our purpose, but it is related. I just did a video earlier this week, which had to do with contribution. It had to do with creating your right work. So if you're interested in that, you can go and watch that video right here. How do we have power between, right, in our relationships and among? And what I want to suggest is that there are many different forms of leadership where, for example, in many organizations, like who's the president of the organization rotates on a regular basis. Of course, the president of the United States rotates every 4 or every 8 years. So rotating leadership. There's also a way where leadership can be in a particular organization. For example, there can be different departments and there can be a head of each of those departments, and each of them is taking leadership in their own departments. Or even in a family, right? Some people are better at some things than others. So maybe one person really loves to shop and to cook, and they like to create a home. And somebody else, likes to work with the technology and likes to work with building things and wants to make sure that everything is functioning properly in the house. Now, that doesn't have to be gender coded, so don't take that. But oftentimes those, the domains break out that way in a household. While the earth is lighting up the gate 45, you get to ground yourself in new forms of leadership that are relatively close in, that can help to create new possibilities for new world leadership that we can all be leaning into during this time when we are looking to be more sustainable, more equitable, finding ways that we can acknowledge each other's sovereignty. So it's not one person who is a sovereign over everyone else, as in royalty, right? It's that we're all sovereign beings and we relate to each other as sovereign beings. It's very different, right? We develop our sovereignty by developing this power within, and then through our ability to do excellent communication with each other, to create mutually beneficial collaborations, and for us to have a benevolent attitude toward each other as humans, but also to the natural world and all of the other species that we share this planet with. This is what the 8 pillars of feminine sovereignty is all about. My invitation to you is to ground yourself in this new forms of leadership for yourself, and to look at where have you already had leadership in your life. It may not be running an organization, right, or being political. It can be very different, and recognizing this in yourself. My personal belief is that we will bring about this new world as we all take more and more leadership in our individual lives, and then in our relationship, typically first in our families and with the people who are close in and in our communities. Because too many of us really just kind of give our leadership away. We give our power away. We're like, oh, somebody else will do that, or that's not really mine to do, or, I don't really care about it, even though I do really care about it. Right? We have too many kind of disempowered strategies that become the norm for us. And my desire is to help inspire you and motivate you to do something different, to take on a little bit more leadership in your life, or maybe a lot more, depending on where you are right now. As you're doing this, of course, you want to make sure that you are in integrity. The sun is going to be lighting this up too, and it's going to be saying, hey, look at where your integrity or not in integrity regarding your own leadership in your life. This is a great topic to be diving into, just to be doing some self-reflection, to be tapping into what's true for you, not so you can make yourself bad and wrong, but so that you can have more awareness, because when you have more awareness, you can make new choices. Until you have more awareness, you kind of just keep bumping along, making the same choices by default that you have been making for however long. It's when you have more awareness, then you go, do I really want to keep doing that way, or do I want to change it? So my question for you this week is, how can you take on a little more leadership with integrity in your life? I'd love to have you share that with me down in the comments. And remember, it doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. It could be as much as just deciding that you are going to do the dishes every time you see them, and you're not going to wait until it's your turn. You're just going to do it because it benefits everyone in your household. It could be as simple as that, because that's moving out of your self-referential kind of rule-based way of being into how can I express more benevolence for everyone. There's always things in our own households that we can do like that, but we can also do it in our communities. How can you provide support to someone maybe before they even ask for it, if you know that they might be suffering a little bit or struggling a little bit in their lives? You just take that on as a form of leadership for you. So go ahead, put something in the comments about what you'd like to experiment with this week. And of course, I'd love you to come back and share more in the comments about how that went for you as you employ that. Here is the video about the 8 pillars of feminine sovereignty that I've been talking about. So go ahead and watch that video next if you'd like to find out more. All right, many blessings, much love. Bye for now.